Hi, I'm Jen Boyle-Tucker from the Bishop staff. I will be very brief tonight since I was very wordy last week, but so happy to have Kathleen Moore and Rebecca Wilson from Canticle Communications here to talk about effective websites. Some of you were able to join us last week for a social media workshop. We will be posting both of those on the website and in the newsletter, and I will include a recording to that of last week's webinar in the chat. But please feel free to use the chat. Feel free to participate and interact, raise hands, however you're comfortable. And thanks to Kathleen.
Excellent, thank you. And I will say, what an awesome day to be with you in the Diocese of Chicago. Congratulations to you and your diocese. Just such an exciting day. So for you and your bishop-elect. So hooray for that. So this evening we're going to talk about congregations' websites. And as with social media, some of the stuff about websites has probably changed a bit in this period in terms of the things you want to think about, but the basics actually really remain the same. So I'm going to start with some of you, I see familiar names, have been to my workshops before. And the perhaps bad news is, yeah, you have to have a website. You have to have a website for your congregation. If people they've moved to town or they've been in town and they're searching and they look on Google and there is not a website for your congregation, they are going to assume that that you are no longer a going concern. So the good news is that you don't have to have anything super fancy, super comprehensive, all the bells and whistles at all. You really, at the very least, need a basic page. It can be one page, and I'm going to talk about how to do that a little bit later, but it can be one page, needs the name of your place, needs the service times, and those need to be like the actual service times, not the service times from 6 months ago or 18 months ago. And this day and age, a little bit of instruction as to what those services are, like if they're online, how to get to them, if they're in person, what that looks like and what the requirements are. But very basically, service times. How do people join you for church? You need a contact email and phone number that actually works. That can be the clergy person, that can be an admin, that can be a senior warden, but one that works, so that again, if someone says, hey, I just moved to town looking for a church, that person's going to get that email or phone call. An address, which seems like a little less, urgent right now, but it is good for people to know where you actually are, how to find you. And then I've added, especially for your diocese, if you are a dual language congregation, you need all of that in the languages that you offer. But again, that can be just one very simple page. Of course, you want to have all of these other things, but I don't want, I've seen sometimes people get so hung up on like sort of the barrier to like building a whole big website that instead they just don't have one. And I don't want that to happen for you. And it can really be not hard. Now, what goes along with that is if people do search for you and they do find a website and that website very clearly has not been updated since 2014, that also is going to make them perhaps make an assumption about how much is really going on at your place and if your place is in fact still open. So again, if that's a problem you have, that let's assume you can actually get into the system, you can update, but you don't sort of have the resources or the time to constantly update every page of the site as it was built. A way you can deal with that is just pare down the website and focus on those main things that you need to have so that you look at least like someone's running the show, like there is something going on. So that's always, I know a lot of you have heard that before. That is always how I start. Now, things are different in this year 2021. So I would add to that, if you can, to add something that acknowledges COVID response, that this is the church is different right now. And so there are a few ways to do that. I'd really recommend that it be kind of upfront and really obvious. So I'm going to show you some examples. One moment. So this is St. Paul's in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and you can see they've got this banner right up top. And so they're telling you right before really you can even like explore the rest of the parish, they're telling you, all right, it's COVID, we're committed to safety, and we're definitely offering virtual offerings. And so you click on that and you get you get their reopening plan, and then you get the sense that, yep, they're not having worship. It's via YouTube. They're not having in-person worship, but they've got all this stuff going on. They're still alive. They're doing virtual stuff. So that tells you a lot really early on when you look at that website. Another is, I want to show you a little bit of a smaller place. I don't want to make it seem as though every place is a big one. So St. Michael's is a relatively little place in Vermont, in Brattleboro, and they too, as you can see, so this is their homepage, and they have this green banner right at the top. So again, before you can really explore much else on the homepage, St. Michael's during COVID-19 important links. And if I were to click on that, it's very similar to what you find in Fayetteville. And then I think I have a third, yes. And so this is Good Samaritan, which is actually an Episcopal church plant in the Diocese of Indianapolis. And again, they have chosen green. It's very funny, but they even have their sort of banner about COVID is above even the sort of menu items. So again, that is the first thing they're wanting you to see. They want you to know that services are held online. And so again, just signaling like they're here, they know it's COVID, and they're responding. And if you're new, here's how to join us. So yeah, last time I gave this workshop, I did not have to say that you might, to your very basic, things to include is, what are we doing during COVID? Let's see. Oh yes, copying links, yes. And so, hold on, I'll grab these for you, as I had promised. And of course, forgot right away. And I also want to take this moment to tell you that you will not see any websites in your own diocese. That does not mean that there aren't exemplary websites in your diocese, but you can imagine the reasons I don't want to do that. You're all wonderful, and you all have wonderful websites. So those are sort of the basics, right? So again, name, service times, contact that works, address, language if you need it, and then this sort of added thing of COVID response, which I hope is not forever. So then backing up a little bit to like how you do this, like how do you build a website, or how do you improve a website that you already have if you sense that that's something you need to do? So I always break this up into what kind of resources you have. So we start with places that are perhaps a bit bigger, that perhaps have more resources, and you can, I had to tell a friend earlier today, it is not shameful to hire a web developer to do this for you. Like that is an okay thing if you have those resources, if you have it in your budget. If the vestry has decided this is a good use of your funds, which I would argue it usually is, then that's a great thing to do. People talk about how to find a web developer, how to find someone to build a website for you. We have at Canonical, we have a few things that we first sort of tell people to avoid. There are sort of these companies that really cater or market to churches. So not really in the like necessarily Episcopal world, but they cater to like churches across the country to do all of the things, right? So we'll do your website and we'll deal with your domain and we'll do all of this stuff. And often, and we have spent a long time getting churches out of those contracts and out of those websites. Often the problem with them is that they provide little control over the product on an everyday basis from the parish and so or the congregation. And so that gets really tricky because sometimes this year again we've learned sometimes you got to like make a major update on Saturday night about Sunday morning. And so that kind of flexibility is really, really important. So that said, if you want to look for someone who's going to build a website for you, there are a few ways to do it. You could look for a local place, local little company that does that. It's actually like a pretty good way to support a small business if there is one in your area. And you know, the way to do that is you can just search and you can look at usually they'll have their own website with examples of the websites they've built. So you can kind of take a look, see the way, you know, see if you like what they've produced. You can ask around your community if, you know, sort of organizations or businesses, you know, like, hey, how'd you do your website? Did someone do it for you? And see if they have good things to say. The other thing is you can use, you know, our church community and church resources. So if there's somebody in the diocese or somebody on Episcopal Communicators, for example, which is, I don't know if you are all familiar with Episcopal Communicators, but it's sort of a group of communications people across the Episcopal Church. You can ask them. So again, it's really about like figuring out who's had luck with these companies, and if they have, you can reach out to them and start to work with them. So yeah.
Sorry, we've got a question, and I think I need a little clarification from Karen on what you're asking.
Oh, yes, Karen. Oh, I see a Y.
Yes.
I love a Y.
No, I'm sorry. That was the beginning of a question and my finger hit the button. I'll put in the full question.
You're going to type the full question?
Well, I can ask you. Typical costs.
Yeah.
What would you anticipate for build out and for maintenance?
That's a really good question that I know. I was actually thinking about that because I don't know the answer to it. Rebecca, you may have a better idea. It's been a while since I've actually had to do that. So.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you can spend a lot of money on a website. Obviously, you can also do it on, you know, find somebody who's competent to develop a simple WordPress site and use a theme that exists already. Theme meaning design that exists already. You know, just tweak it maybe a little bit to suit your congregation, and that, you know, you might be able to accomplish, including the hosting and all of those things for, you know, I don't know, $1,500 or something. More realistically, I would budget a few thousand, unless you're talking about the kind of very basic, really web page that Kathleen talked about in the beginning, which again is a totally fine thing to do, but one page that just basically says, we're here, here's where our service, here's when our services are, here's who we are. You know, come and see us. And in that, if that's the case, then a few $100 should be enough to get that up and going. But I, you know, hate to give you numbers because you know, the options are so broad depending on the design and depending on the number of pages. And frankly, depending on whether you get somebody who is making some money on the side doing websites, or whether you go to you know, a firm that has overhead and is doing this for a living.
Yeah. Thank you, Rebecca. And that's why I like people I've known people who have luck with sort of the little companies that you can find. And again, it really depends on where you live, but that you can find these like, you know, 3 people who have this little, you know, little website design company in your town. Yes, Lorraine.
Hi. There are, I've done some research and work with different website building tools.
Yes.
And I'm a musician, so I totally love and get into this. But really, there are a number of, if you're interested, I could share at another time, but there are a number of products out there that you can, website building tools, whether it's, the WordPress is one, but also Squarespace, Wix.
Lorraine,
Wix is
I
awesome.
love this. You're anticipating my program, and that's my favorite thing in the world because it tells me I'm going in the right direction. So yes, this is awesome. That's
Oh,
my
okay.
next. That's the next one.
Oh, okay. Let me just finish and then I'll
Yeah.
let you take over again. Um, Actually, these things are pretty awesome because you can spend just maybe a couple $100 and then you can do in-house editing on your own, and they're very user friendly, and you can teach a number of lay people, as well as staff. I don't know. I just think there's just an awesome world out there with it, but I'm going to let you take over.
No, that's awesome. No, I really mean it. You've teed that up wonderfully. So I appreciate it. It's fantastic. And I agree. So yeah, this is sort of, we're going to go in sort of 3 phases of like what your resources are, what your energy is behind this. So we're starting with, we have resources and we have financial resources. We maybe don't have that much energy and human resources at our disposal.
Let me just add, I'm so sorry, Kathleen, apologies. Let me just add that you're probably wondering, yeah, but what is the monthly fee, right? I'm all about numbers and budget. You can do this for, $10 a month.
Yeah.
10 to $25 a month easily.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't need to break the bank.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Sorry.
Let's see. Okay, so when if you're, again, we're not quite to the, Squarespace builder part, but if you're going to work with a developer, you're going to have someone do this for you. There are just a couple things that we recommend. One is we recommend they build it on like what's called open source content management system. So sort of one that means that if there ever comes a day that you want to sort of refresh, rebuild on what you've got, it's going to be a lot easier if you've got something like WordPress. Also, it just makes it easier for you to maintain it after it's built. It's just, we really recommend not getting locked into like what's called a custom content management system, because again, it's hard to explain, but kind of age your site really fast, and it can be harder to deal with, harder to find help because you don't have a whole like community on Facebook to ask how to do things. And then another thing, if you're sort of doing a contract with one of these companies, is to make sure that it includes time to teach your people who are going to have your hands on this website how to update it. So include that, make sure that's going to be included, that in COVID time, they're going to get on Zoom and screen share and show you how to work it. And then maybe in real time and regular time when we're together again, that they would come to your place if they're local and show you sort of step-by-step how to do things. An example of custom, I can't tell you, it's that they would build your website and you just have this like login and this, again, sort of original thing that like works in a way that it only works for this company that you've signed up for. Does that make sense? It's like if it was a social network that none of us that like 50 people used as opposed to Facebook, so it's like if you need help with figuring out something on Facebook, you can kind of ask your neighbor, like, how do you do that on Facebook? But with this, you don't have that because it's this sort of smaller user base. I hope that helps.
Kathleen, I would also say that if the vendor is saying that no one can make the updates but them, then that's the run, don't walk.
Yes. Yes, exactly. That's so important. You need to be able to update it. Best case scenario, there's more than one person in your congregational system who are able to update it. So one example that I'm just going to show of a place with a whole lot of all the kinds of resources that has a professional website that is actually built on WordPress is our friends at All Saints Atlanta. Very big place. And I happen to know They have just they've taken COVID time as an opportunity to refresh their website. Again, I mean, it's not too complicated because you don't want it to be, even if you've got all of the money and resources, right? But just to know that this is a big old fancy place, so much stuff going on, and they are the system, the CMS they are running on is WordPress. So I think I saw something in the chat. Yes, input. That's a great question, Gloria. How much will you be able to update without calling the company and paying for the work? Right. And again, that's sort of why encouraging the kind of CMS that that other people use is so good, because hopefully it's pretty user friendly because it's got such a big user base, but also you can kind of talk to your colleagues and don't always have to call the company. So. All right, now we're moving to, if you are either a place maybe who doesn't, just doesn't have or doesn't want to spend the resources on like professional development or anything like that, or just really wants to do this cool thing, as Lorraine says, of kind of doing your own thing, there are a growing number of increasingly easy to use web builders. And so these are sites that you really you've seen advertisements for them, I'm sure. You log on and they sort of take you through the process, and it's pretty easy of building your own websites. They tend to work on templates. And so you kind of have to scroll through and you see all the templates, and it does take time to decide what's going to work for you, and sort of experimentation and bringing all the things together. So some of those are WordPress.com. And this is very confusing because there's WordPress.org and WordPress.com. So if you're doing this on your own and you just want the really basic builder, which is a competitor to say Weebly, Squarespace, Wix, which you've probably heard of, you want WordPress.com. And again, it works very similarly. You sort of go on, I think it says something like start your website, and you press the button and you start building. In terms of which ones I recommend, I actually really like WordPress.com. It's really easy to use. It's a little, and again, this is sort of opinion, it's a little harder to get it to, especially for a church website, to get it to like look really pretty and slick as it is like on Squarespace. Like all of the templates on Squarespace sort of come out of the box looking pretty. I find my personal favorite, I am not alone in this. I have seen posts from other church communicators who agree with this. My personal favorite is Squarespace. Again, for sort of ease of use, for templates that work, just for sort of how fast it takes to kind of get off the ground. Some people really, I've also had experience with Weebly and I really like it. Some people really swear by that one. I don't recommend Wix. There may be folks on this Zoom who like it. I know that there are people who like it. It happens to drive me crazy. I find it really, really hard to use, but that again, it's total personal preference. So what I tend to tell people who are thinking of doing this on their own, and they know they're going to be the one in the congregation who's doing this, if you don't have experience with it, the awesome thing is it's free to try all of these. So it's like I tell people to sign up for the free one. You're not going to be able to publish a website for free, but like they'll let you play around enough to see how it feels. And pick the one that feels best, that you think offers the product that's going to work best for your place, and also that you feel really comfortable working in, because that's going to be important. Episcopal Communicators. Rebecca, would you mind? Are you able to share a link? So Episcopal Communicators is a group of church communicators across the Episcopal Church. They have a yearly convention kind of thing. What's the word? We haven't had them in so long that I've forgotten. They have a yearly gathering of all of the members. They also have a fantastic Facebook group that you can join. Now they do, I feel like they would be really upset with me if I did not share. It does cost, there's a yearly cost to being a member of Episcopal Communicators. If you are a communicator for your congregation, you might ask if they can set aside some budget for you to be a member of Episcopal Communicators. But it is great because, again, it's sort of a ready-built group of people who are doing the same kind of work. And again, I think these days the Facebook group is probably where most of this stuff goes on, but it's really cool because you can ask a question just sort of out of the blue. These days, it's been a lot of stuff about Zoom and Facebook Live, and people will give you answers. Also, because of the search feature in Facebook groups, you can search back. So you could do a search for Weebly, and you'll find all of the posts and responses about Weebly. And so it may be that whatever you're asking has already been asked and answered, which is the best. So yes, I hope that was enough. And I'm just going to show you, just by way of example, some of these sites that I know have been set up by communicators in-house, building from these tools alone, no professionals involved. So, one moment. So this is St. John's in Oakland. This was built on Weebly by their deacon in-house. This was done, I think, early last year. And again, this is it's nothing fancy, but it's what you need for a parish website, and it is the cost of Weebly. So, and that's it. And it certainly looks professional to me and does the job. This is Grace, Newton, Massachusetts. This was built on Squarespace. And I like this because, again, this is a bit of an example of about as simple as you could get, although they are doing this kind of fancy thing of embedding their worship there on the homepage and their worship leaflet. So the story they're telling here is, we want you to come. We are alive and kicking in the pandemic, and we want you to come to our worship. And it's right here on our homepage. This is St. Stephen's in Longmont, Colorado. It was built on Squarespace. And again, simple, but it looks nice. It looks easy to navigate. And it's got all the information that you need. So I just always like to be able to demonstrate clearly that indeed, Lorraine, this is so possible, and people actually do have a lot of fun with it. So I will open it to questions in just a moment. The one last thing that I wanted to say about this is there's this, what I call the in-between option, which is if you have a parishioner, a child of a parishioner, a local school that might give credit to someone for building you a site, that works. Like that, I've seen that work. So if you wanted to use one of these builders like Squarespace, and you had someone in your orbit who was willing to put in the initial time to design it and to get it off the ground, and then to teach you how to use it, that is, and hopefully you would pay them, but it would hopefully be much cheaper than maybe other options. That can be a really, really great option. Again, with schools, I've seen this done in Vermont in a really, really small rural parish years and years ago. There actually ended up being a newspaper story because this worked out so well for everyone. They found this school where the students were really needing clients to sort of build out these websites so that they could get credit for it. So that worked out really well for everybody. Yes, I'm new here. Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? There are there are different. The answer is you won't get the same answer across sites. And some put them like right up center, and some put them kind of harder to find. And I think, again, I'm going to talk about this a little bit, but that tells a story, right, about who they are, like how prominent the I'm new here is. I think the most effective ones that are I'm new here sort of really clearly say, like, what should my next step be if I'm interested in, what could my next steps be if I'm interested in becoming a part of this community or checking out this community. The 3,000th caveat that looks really different right now than it might have a year and a half ago. So some people will offer, one of my favorites will say, here is a human being, again, maybe the rector, maybe a parishioner, someone else, here's a human being. Please feel free to call them to set up a time to talk, to see, to answer your questions, all of that stuff, or come to our worship, because for some people, like, it's an absolute nightmare for the first thing to be like a one-on-one conversation. So offer that option of like either the digital version or the in-person version of like sitting in the back pew. Thank you very much. Don't need the interaction. So yeah, it really depends on what your place is and how people, I think that those pages, it's like, okay, think about how people do enter this place. Like, what are the entry points, and figure out a way on the web page to offer to go through those things. But again, I don't have a cookie cutter answer because congregations aren't cookie cutters. Gloria says, one of the differences between these Squarespace, Wix, Weebly, and others developed by designers is that they don't require knowledge of programming and coding. If a small local designer talks about using Dreamweaver or Front Page, run away fast. Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, that's sort of what I meant. We don't want, and even if like you happen to have someone in your congregation who is really good with that stuff, still don't do that, because they might get a new job and move to another state. So yeah, definitely make sure that whatever you're doing, whatever you're building, is something that, again, at least 2 people involved with your congregation are going to be able to be comfortable with and update regularly. So yes, so I'm going to stop and ask if there are any questions. Yes, Mary Pat.
Hi, thanks. This is really helpful. I'm with Grace in Oak Park here in Illinois. We have a dream, and one of the challenges we have when we're fully back and operational, but even now to a certain extent, is we have different schedules for different ministries. So there's a schedule for the lectors and the intercessors, and there's a schedule right now for our webmaster, what we'd really love to do is to figure out a way to make that, all those schedules, interactive with the same calendar.
Yep.
So that, and you can imagine what this is like for a family that has acolytes, and maybe one of the parents is an intercessor and whatever. Yep. Or an LEM or whatever. Is there a service or a calendar system that integrates with one of these websites that would allow you to put all this together?
So there is a free option that will work with any website, which is Google Calendar. And there is a way, and if you want to, I'll put my email in the chat, but if you want to email me, I can sort of give some more details about how to do this, but it's really easy in Google to create sort of multiple calendars and have those embedded on the website, and even have it, the benefit of that is a lot of people use Google Calendar in their lives. And so you can actually make it so that, yeah, if you've got parents with acolytes, that they can actually just subscribe. So they don't even have to go to the website. They'll have it sort of on their calendar. So that's one way. It's like sort of the least fancy, sophisticated way maybe, but it works really well and it's free. So there's that. And it works with because it's embeddable, it works with any website. I don't know what you've got going now, but there are also, like for WordPress, for example, there are many calendaring sort of plugins that would work in this way. And then last, if you do have sort of a developer or something like that, again, like this is not a a very unusual sort of problem that people have. Oh, and the last thing I'll say is that some folks, again, it sort of depends on the scale of your place, but some folks use things like Realm, which people have probably heard of, sort of more for those internal calendar kind of things, because that is exactly the kind of thing that Realm's built for. But again, Realm costs a lot of money, so so you can also use Google Calendar for free. So
Thanks.
Carol. Oh, Carol, you're going to have to unmute yourself.
You talked about WordPress.com and Squarespace, Wix and Weebly. And which was your favorite? Was Squarespace?
Yeah, again, total,
Totally,
don't
yeah.
say
And then
hate it, but it's my total opinion and I do like it a lot.
And what about Wix or Weebly?
I like Weebly a lot. I statement, do not like Wix.
Okay.
I just find it hard to use. So let's see. I'm catching up. Well, actually, Karen.
Thank you. We use GoDaddy and we sort of fell into it. It's super easy and we spend less than $200 a year. It's easy to update. It takes really no training or knowledge of IT to do. So those are really good things. It has its limitations for sure. They're templates. You don't have a lot of variety. But my question is, what are the best practices for content? Do you favor pages that you may have to scroll down on, or more pages, but you have to click through? What do you put on your homepage? Just the very basics, or do you actually include current events and most recent announcements? Can you elaborate a little bit on how we might build out a site, assuming we can?
So the first part, first of all, that's really good to hear about GoDaddy. I have absolutely no experience with them. So that's just, I will take that with me as information I have. The second is actually the content questions, which are all amazing, are my next piece. So I will get to those. Thank you, Karen. Let's see. I do want to catch up with the.
I'll just say while Kathleen is looking at the other questions, I will just say that that I'm glad you're having a good experience with GoDaddy. And I think they've evolved like all companies have evolved. They have been known for some pretty aggressive marketing practices and kind of hidden fees that you don't necessarily understand that you're signing up for until they show up on your bill. And yes, I'm seeing that we stopped using GoDaddy because of the misogyny in their advertising. Mm-hmm. I think that they've gotten it together a little bit more because of the pushback that they got. But that I leave up to all of you. But if you are going to use GoDaddy, and I'm delighted the web tool is working well for you, just be super clear about what you're buying and what you're not, so that you don't start to see charges appear on your bill that kind of were hidden when you subscribed.
Thank you, Rebecca. That's an important, very important point. So I'm looking at the chat here. What you might have to say about building a unified web presence versus having a bunch of loose parts. And her examples are Realm, Wix website, Constant Contact, SiteGround, which I'm not sure I know what that is, StreamSpot, also not, I assume that's a streaming service, Library, Google Calendar, and Docs.
SiteGround is just a hosting.
Oh,
service.
Hosting, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of those, I mean, there actually is some necessity to having multiple tools for your communications. So, I mean, I would say at the very least, you need a website, you need some way of sending out emails. And we really recommend, if you can, using an email service like Constant Contact, which of course is separate from your website. And yeah, you would need then SiteGround for your website. And Google Calendar and Docs. I mean, hopefully that gets integrated in some ways in your website. The Realm question is a real question like for your congregation. Like that's an entirely separate conversation, because it's really about internal communications. And so I'm at the first, right now I'm at my first place that uses Realm, and it's really cool. It's a really good way to communicate with your people. All of it can be replicated in some kind of way. It's not as easy, not as slick, but in some kind of way that doesn't cost a lot of money. But it's super cool if you if you can afford it and use it. My short answer to that question is like, it's kind of annoying, but you do kind of need multiple tools for these different kinds of communicating, but certainly not more than one like website presence. You definitely want like one website that you go to for your congregation. If you need to have, some other new message, you can always have a new page on the website that you send people to. And you can even buy a separate URL that sends people to that page on your website. But definitely don't recommend. There's probably some exceptions, but in general, do not recommend more than one website for your parish. Yes, Emily, I will share with you. Websites looks good on iPhone. So what's great about, or on a phone, sorry. What's great about that is about these new services, almost all of them, no, definitely all of the mainstream sort of web builder services, their templates are gonna be built to be, to look okay on mobile devices, to look good on mobile devices. So responsive design, right? And you can even see it in most of these websites when you're using your computer browser, that like as you make it smaller or as you make it bigger, the website adjusts. Some of these tools will actually show you as you're sort of editing and stuff, like what it will look like on your phone. So I used to worry about that. That used to be a thing. I was like, you want to make sure that it works on the phones, but that's become less of an issue because all of these companies became aware that is just super important. One thing is like, as you do sort of get to know your site and learn it and build it out, like it is important every once in a while to look at what it looks like on your phone, just to understand like, okay, so when I put this, when I update this is the first thing people are going to see on their phone, and stuff like that. Like, it's just kind of nice to have a sense of it, but yeah, that's not a huge concern these days at all. Yes, GoDaddy, Jenny was on that. Let's see. Oh, and another question about mobile friendly. Yeah, mobile optimized. Again, almost all the templates, if not all of them at this point, will be. Sign Up Genius, sign up to Acolyte for attendance at service. Yeah, Sign Up Genius is great. I've been using it for sure. It's a great tool. And you can, of course, like embed the link to Sign Up Genius on your website. So that's great. Good tool if anyone needs a sign up tool. Gloria.
Will you be talking at all about some of the updating things? My website, as you know, since you helped me with it a whole lot, was on Wix. We launched it almost 3 years ago now. And so I'm really interested in the look. Mm-hmm. And particularly the homepage and what I should be looking at to keep it looking current. Yeah. Will you be talking about that?
We'll be talking a little bit about that. Yeah. And I'm getting back.
Because I've seen some that really are slick, and they're, I don't know if there are things that I could easily do with the Wix site that I have, or if I would really have to go back to ground zero.
It's a really good question, and I'll it. And I'm gonna mute for some reason. And let's see. Sorry, there are two things. I'm curious who's posted. So yeah, see that server posting a server calendar publicly. That is, I mean, if it's, I was thinking in terms of server calendars, like, I don't know, just saying like first names or something like that, but some people really don't even, that seems uncomfortable, and that's okay. So that is where something like Realm comes in, is useful. But the other thing that you can do on most of the, I can't imagine you can't do that. There's one that you can't do this. You can have private pages on your website. So almost, yeah, again, I can't imagine there's a service that I know you can do it on Squarespace. I know you can do it on WordPress to have these private pages, either password protected, something like that for just parishioners, because that's a genuine concern for sure. We use Realm, and Donna says we use Realm, and we saved money moving to their accounting platform, right? The directory section has great tools for managing volunteers, setting up events. Exactly. I mean, that's the really fun, cool thing about Realm. Again, I'm just brand new to it. The ability is the directory based stuff, right? So you can there's no privacy concern, at least in terms of having people's names and what groups they're in and what they're gonna, what their schedule is. So it's really nice, and you don't have to worry about it being public facing. So if you can swing it, it's really nice. Karen. Karen Brom?
I'm sorry. I think my phone is shorting out in some way.
Oh, no.
It's not me.
Okay. All right. So I'm so sorry. I'm running over again, but you all have good questions. So I'm going to go into the content area because we've had some really good questions about that. So beyond the sort of the if nothing else kind of content, the thing about deciding how your content is set out. So to the question we got earlier about do we have more pages? How do we do, what navigation items do we decide? What do we put on the homepage? What don't we put on the homepage? This is actually a really good exercise. And what Canticle does when they're working with a congregation is it's really a bigger question. It starts with these questions of who are you as a congregation? What is it about you as a congregation? What are the things that are your story? And so thinking about telling the story of who you are, especially when people hit that home page. Not only that, telling the story, thinking about who it is you want to reach. So to be honest, again, we've kind of talked about this with Realm, with things that we want to keep private, things we don't, but really a home page of a website is probably most of the time going to be oriented toward new people or newer people. I don't think we have very many, if we have members using some area of the website regularly, finding out if they're serving this week, they kind of are probably going to know how to get there. But that homepage is really the entry point for people who may be looking or exploring or thinking about coming again. And so there are sort of two elements of that. One is sort of what are the visual, the big hero image visuals that we want there to show what we're about. And the other really is you don't think about this, but what we call the architecture of the site, what are on those top navigations, what are those words, actually do tell you something. So I know I'm so unsatisfying. I don't have a single answer to that question. Obviously, there are the really obvious ones. There's sort of the standards. Again, you want to have something about worship and when we worship, and probably something about staff and who we are and things like that. But for example, if you're one of those places that is all about website is the new front door, exactly. If you have one of those places that is all about music, people drive from 45 minutes, an hour away because of your music program, you're probably going to have a top nav and want to have a top nav item that says music and has underneath that all the amazing stuff, your concerts and your musician in residence and all of this choirs, all the different choirs and all of this stuff. You're going to want to have that because again, even the music is right up there, instantly tells people something about you. So that's one example. If you're justice oriented, if that's what your people do, then that's your image. You got people out there, maybe with signs at a protest, that's together as your parish, that's who you are. And again, maybe you have a top nav item that is just justice. And again, under that, whatever it is, your group that works on that, your community partners, whatever, again, that tells the story. If you're an Anglo-Catholic place and that sort of kind of worship is really important to you, we know people look for that. So again, in the imagery that you're showing there on your homepage, tell that story, have the incense, right? Like that, like show it to the people, because that's the story of who you are. If you're a place that has wonderful children's programs, that really is offering children's programming, show that, have that in the top nav. And then like it's interesting, All Saints Atlanta, for example, is really, and I actually have not heard this from them, I have taken this from their website, that they are spending a lot of time and thought on adult formation. And so they have built this page that I absolutely love. And I told my friend who helped work on it, I was like, it looks like Netflix. And he was like, that's not a coincidence. So they have all these little adorable, cute looking squares with all the different classes you can take all online, and you just have to click. And it again tells a story like, okay, this is a place that's for people who want to like really learn and dig into things and read and watch movies and talk about it. Like that's a very quick way to tell something about that congregation. And then in terms of how we're gathered right now, or not gathered, as the case may be, this is an opinion thing. I've heard people argue it the other way. I could find one example of it. This one example I could find today. I am going to make an argument that if you have control of your homepage and the imagery on it, that you include at least one image of how you are gathering right now. I think I will say some of these sites like actually like made me really sad. That's not to say take down all the images of the past, like we need to keep them, but it was a little like, oh, like there's just there's no indication of that this place is sort of living now and meeting now. So I did find one place, I can show it to you, although I don't think I'm going to have time, where it's like it showed, you know, a still of their Zoom worship and everyone was waving. It showed artwork that the children have done that they've used in their children's formation. It showed a very small distanced wedding that they've had. And so again, the story it told was like, all right, this is a place that is still very much living the life of the church. And it's telling us the true story of what that looks like now, which leads to my last sort of really basic content thing, which many of you have heard me say before, I think, which is that, so in telling these stories, make sure they're true stories. And the one we as Episcopalians are most guilty of telling ourselves and the world around us is about the children. If you've got children, like an awesome picture of children's ministry on your homepage, and those children now have children or could, it's probably time to take that down as the center or as a central image of who you are, or find a new picture if you've still got that going on. But a lot of us don't, and that's okay. That's okay. But what you don't want is to tell a story like this is the kind of place with kids running around and have, you know, a family show up expecting it to be that kind of place, and it's not. Doesn't mean they still won't show up, but like if the first impression is, oh, these folks definitely are sort of telling us about themselves in a way that is not genuine, that's probably not good. The question about sort of how much is going on the homepage, really differing points of view on that. I will say people will scroll. It seems to be that people will scroll through content. You'll see, I'm a fan of really the what is currently sort of the template, the main template, which is sort of that top navigation, big image, either sliding images or just one. And then I do like those little squares. That's again, I did a lot of looking at websites today. That seems to be sort of, that's what people are doing. So squares that lead to information. So either sort of pages, again, that are really important to who you are, or most recent news. If you do that, you've got to have news going on. So be warned. because those can get stale fast. And then, you know, maybe you have a calendar, maybe you have Facebook embedded there on the bottom. But again, like as you sort of get down the page, that stuff is probably less and less urgent. So it doesn't mean you don't fill it out, but it does mean, like, you know, you think about the order that things are in. The question about sort of sprucing up and like what's in, it's been this way actually for a number of years. And so is sort of the white background, sort of clean, simple, and again, sort of big image, then maybe some smaller things toward the bottom. But yeah, simplicity and ease of use. I think at some point everyone was like, oh yeah, these things should, like, again, even if it's a huge place and we can spend all the money in the world, the answer is not to add every bell and whistle if that means that someone can't come on and find what they need to find really easily. Which leads to, I have two more notes. One is a note about accessibility. So one of the reasons websites have gotten sort of more and more simple, I believe, is that they're responding to what we either now know or now are responding to, however nice you want to be, with having our websites be accessible to all people, the people with disabilities. And so that has an effect on the typeface we use, and it has an effect on the colors we use and contrast and things like that. And I am going to put a link in here where you can explore that stuff. It's really interesting. Don't freak out because it's all pretty intuitive. It really is. It's like you don't want like black text on a blue background kind of thing. You don't want sort of fancier looking fonts, right? You want like really easy to read fonts, but do sort of check on that. Again, if you're using like a template and you're not adjusting it that much, those are probably already going to meet your needs. So that's also a really good thing about using one of those, you know, those ready-made templated services like Squarespace. And then the last thing I will say is a note about, we had this last week too, a note about rights. Websites are the same as social media. If you're using an image, you cannot go onto some other website, onto a news source, the AP, whatever, and grab an image, even if it's a really good sermon illustration, and put it on your site. We, as Rebecca said last week, we have heard of people getting in trouble for that, and it is not something that you want. It is expensive. So yeah, I think I'll stop there because again, I'm running really late, but I'm willing to stay to answer questions and comments. And let me look in the chat.
Kathleen?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I have a question about, I think one of the things that a lot of our folks who are trying to do this on their own struggle with the hero image.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, the ones that we saw that are good are, you know, art quality hero images. Are there strategies for getting that when you don't have a huge budget? And how often should that hero image change? Sorry.
Yep. So 2 suggestions for that. The first is, yes, if you can have perhaps one occasion, if you don't have a big budget, perhaps one occasion, perhaps it is not Christmas or some other highly identifiable season, when you bring a photographer in. Even better, maybe you have a pretty darn good photographer in your congregation who can take really high quality images. That's amazing. And if you can really like take a time to do that you're like a Sunday, choose to do it. Those, again, if you make it like it's inside and it's not so obvious that those can last a long time. If you do have a photographer in-house who's a member who can take the Christmas photos and the Easter photos and whatever, that's fantastic and will make it look really fresh as the year goes around. but it's not entirely necessary. But you do want those photos to be quality, because that is, I mean, Jen, that's so true. This new kind of standard format really requires high quality photography, which is hard. It's hard for some of our places. The other thing that y'all have heard a million times is, for those images, please have people in them. Your buildings are beautiful, but it's people that we want to see. And again, knowing that it's COVID, that's all a little different these days. But I do want to show you this site I was talking about, which has a nice combination. So again, this is a place that has this is St. Andrews and Wellesley, lots of children's ministry. Let's see if that's going to move. I don't know why it's not moving. Let's see if I can make it move. No, darn. I'm going to put the link in it because I think my internet has had it. But they also have, as their hero images, they're the ones that have the picture of the children's art. They have the still of Zoom. And those aren't like, you wouldn't traditionally think of those as like high quality images, but they're really doing the job. And the wedding picture, they're really telling the story of what's going on at that place. Another thing is, like, it's not guaranteed, but these phones of ours have such increasing quality that if you've got someone with an eye who takes the right photo on the iPhone, like that can work. That photo might be the winning one. So that's a possibility we didn't have just a few years ago. So yes, we hired a professional photographer on our last bishop visit. That's a good one. And we now have beautiful high-res photos of people in the building and other elements. That is exactly what we're talking about. Like, choose an occasion where everyone's going to be there and feel good, and everything's going to be all like looking its best, and take all the photos you can. And those will last you for quite some time. Beth?
I do work for ECW.
Yeah.
And we hire a photographer when we have an event, and it would work for the parish also.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that I hire a professional photographer, and she is a member of one of the churches in our diocese, is that I tell her to take pictures constantly throughout the event. Because invariably what happens is people try to get that one special moment, and then you have nothing else. And you can crop the heck out of these pictures.
Right.
So I tell her to basically throw out the obvious junk, the stuff that's out of focus, that's poorly lit, unusable.
Yep.
But everything else, even if somebody is making a face, even if something's weird in it, there's often someone else in the picture who looks terrific.
Absolutely.
And you can crop that and use that picture.
Yes.
And never mind the person in the background who's making weird faces, and once you have that morgue, once you have that collection of photographs, like, that's endless opportunities. So that you want to put together a picture of the people in your church. It's like, oh, good, we've got all these faces, that it's not just all from online sources where, who is that person? I've never seen them at our church before. It's like internet people. So it's kind of nice to, be able to represent the people in your group, and you can easily use them for multiple years. So when I'm doing promotions for our group, I'm doing things forwards and backwards. For all of you who get my emails, you know what I do. And it's like, hi, we have something coming up. Here's pictures from last year. Isn't that exciting? And then it's like, oh, look, here's pictures from this year. We had a great time.
Yes.
So you do that on your website too. You want to entice them with pictures from the previous event so that it looks exciting. And then once it happens, you want to make sure that that's the content you put back on your website. We had a great time. Sorry you missed it. Next thing coming up is this. So you're always working backwards and forwards. So all your communications need to work forwards and backwards that way, even your website. But the big thing about managing a website in my mind is, how much stuff on there do you want to have to mess with all the time?
Yep.
And it's hard enough to keep up with all the activities that a church does beyond the calendar, but to purposefully put in things that are very time sensitive
Yep.
gets exhausting to have to keep going back to your website. Have we updated it this week, this month, this year? You know, I mean, everybody has the misfortune of going to a website that's multiple years old. It's
Yes.
because they're exhausted and they just,
Yes.
you know, it's like, I'm sorry, the last thing we posted was Christmas and now we're almost at Easter. We have not had the energy to update. And so that's something that I think every church does better to have less and keep it updated than to get really excited about putting a lot of stuff online and having 2/3 of it be old. You have the wrong names for people to contact. You have the wrong phone numbers or inoperable email connections and things. And we also, the other thing is our websites allow us forwarding addresses for emails. And I highly support that because it protects you from your own personal email going off into space.
For
You
sure.
can't communicate with it, but you can receive it. So if you have someone who is on the Altar Guild and they want to receive information, then the address is just altar at the name of your, at whatever your extension is for your church. And then that information gets forwarded directly to them. And every time your leader changes, you don't have to change the email, you just change who it connects to. So that's really helpful, and it prevents people's personal emails from being published in such an obvious place. So hot
Uh,
tips.
Thank you. Those were great. And they do go back to sort of one of the first things I said is give yourself a break. Like if you know you can't be updating all these pages, then you know, trim down the site itself. Also, if you have all those pages, you probably didn't need all of them in the first place. Because again, the work of the website, more than sort of the day-to-day nitty-gritty of parish life, which hopefully you have an email newsletter that's doing a lot of that work for you. Again, is to sort of tell that story of who you are to folks who might be checking you out. So, yes, in my humble opinion, most websites are too busy. Yes. Yes, institutional emails. Yeah. Yep. Oh, Lorraine.
It's kind of like sorry, it's kind of like in emails, you know, you have all these emails going back and forth with parishioners, business, or whatever. It's too much information. And so it's important to, well, in my humble opinion, less is better. Simple can be more beautiful. And so, yeah, like in an email, instead of, I like sometimes have to write it 3, 4 times and take out. First, I start with 6 paragraphs down to 2, and then down to 1. You know what I'm saying? It just
Yeah, it's
kinda,
just like editing, right?
yeah, and it's as much as you can simplify it and be specific, and yeah, that goes a longer ways. I just find in a lot of my research with websites and stuff, they're way too many, way too busy, way too busy, and it makes you have to look more, look around more and hunt, and more people don't have the time or want to spend the time doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but anyways, it's a fun stuff to do.
It is. And thank you for that. And I think that's part of why all these templates have gone to these gigantic images, because it's like saving us from ourselves. Like, no, don't put all these words. I know you want to put all these words up top. Don't. Just big old photo.
I also think, Lorraine, if your enthusiasm and enjoyment of doing it, get your succession plan going. I think that's so great because you like what you're doing, but teach the next person and find somebody else who has that same enthusiasm, because it's never ending work.
Well, and that's what's so amazing about, the newer website building tools is that you really can over time work with more, not just the staff, but more lay leadership, and teach them how to just go in there and update their little, a little area. And so it's a I'm trying to find the right word in my brain. Sorry. It's a community ownership, right? There's more people involved, the more ownership of it is. I don't know. More recently, I heard this not in my church necessarily, but it's kind of like in finances. The more people you have involved in it, then the blame can be spread, or the praise,
Right.
can be shared, and all that. But yeah, these website builder tools, I just think they're I just love it, and I'd like to do a lot more of it. Volunteer in our diocese.
Oh, uh-oh. That's amazing.
Yeah, no, I'd love to get together with you and talk about it if you
Yes,
can.
please. That would be fantastic.
I think there's like a real need for things like this, as well as like Gloria, I'll bet you're having a ball with virtual choir technology. You know, I've been pretty much nonstop since March 15. I'm actually in a couple weeks going to finally take a month off after all this time. But the majority of what I've done technology has really been getting like older people on Zoom, engaging them, more of that stuff than I've done only a little bit with the virtual choir, because that is a very complicated media. People don't realize. I've done some, but hours and hours and hours of just, going into small things relative to that. Anyways, I won't go on and on, but yeah, I think that there's a real need for more of this kind of user-friendly, engaging training on, with all parts of the media. And yeah, anyways, I could go on. Sorry, I'm babbling.
No, I'm so glad. And yeah, I think it's like my work giving these workshops has changed significantly in the last few years, because exactly, it used to be like, all right, social media, here's how to do this, you can do this, but websites are a little more complicated, and it's not really that story anymore. And it's so great.
And isn't it kind of cool? I mean, I certainly, of course, miss being in the sanctuary, and being in that medium and so. But I think it's smart to keep this up and to get even better at this, because there are people that are coming in that don't usually. But even beyond that, you can see each other.
I know.
One of my partners saying, all you see is the back of everybody's head in the pew,
I am a Zoom church evangelist, so I've been here all along. So I hear you.
But thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lorraine. I think your enthusiasm and your willingness to teach others will help demystify and hopefully build confidence in some of our other folks. So I definitely am going to take you up on that offer, however we connect people. It's just such a great opportunity.
And I have saved the chat so that I actually do get to the people that I said I would get back to. And I have taken you 15 minutes late again. But I want to thank all of you again. I love this group. I love these workshops. I do love Zoom, but it'll be fun to do maybe something like this in person once again. So thank you again for both of these weeks, Jen.
Oh, thank you so much. It's great to see you all. I'm glad that we have the opportunity to record this and share it. And I feel like I see people already putting this information into action, and I'm thrilled with that. So we'll have to come up with a creative idea for our next workshop.
Thank you, everyone.
Dan, I will send out an email link to the chat, or an attachment to all the folks who registered. And I will also include the recordings of this video and last week's. So thanks so much for asking.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.